Thabo Mbeki, a leader born into the struggle. Before Thabo Mbeki could even walk, his life was already part of a revolution. This is the untold story of South Africa's intellectual statesman and thought leader. Welcome to Peak World. If you enjoy this video, please like and subscribe to help us reach 500 subscribers. If ever there was a leader born and raised in a politically charged environment, it was Thabo Mbeki. Before he was even born, his parents were members of the Communist Party of South Africa, CPSA, now known as the South African Communist Party, SACP, and they were also members of the ANC. Mbeki has said that he was born into the struggle and recalls that his childhood home was decorated with portraits of Karl Marx and Mahatma Gandhi. His paternal grandfather was among those who helped build the University of Fort Hare, a university with a rich history of producing many African leaders. His father was also arrested with Nelson Mandela and spent 24 years on Robben Island fighting for freedom in South Africa. His two biological brothers, Jama and Moletsi, were also part of the struggle against apartheid. Thabo Mbeki was born on June 18, 1942, in Mbewuleni, a small village in the former homeland of Transkei, which is now part of the Eastern Cape. He attended primary school in Idutiwa and Butterworth and high school at Lovedale Alice, the same school that was attended by Chris Hani and Steve Biko. While a student at the Lovedale Institute, he joined the African National Congress Youth League, ANC Youth League, at the age of 14, although he had wanted to join the ANC at age 10, but was turned away for being too young. He was expelled from school in 1959 as a result of student strikes and was forced to continue his studies at home as the system feared he would politicize other students. On the instructions of the ANC, the young Thabo Mbeki left South Africa with other students in 1962 for southern Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe, passing through Tanganyika, now Tanzania, where he was offered travel documents before settling in the United Kingdom, UK, to study. He obtained a bachelor's degree in economics and a master's degree. His master's dissertation focused on economic geography, which shows how the ANC was grooming him for a future role. He continued his political activities as a university student in the UK, mobilizing the international student community against apartheid. In 1964, there was a threat of the death penalty for the Rivonia trialists. This was a political and personal fight for Mbeki because his father, Govan Mbeki, Nelson Mandela, and their comrades were among the Rivonia trialists. Between 1967 and 1970, he worked for the ANC office in London, during which time he also underwent military training in the then Soviet Union. On November 23, 1974, he married Zanele Dlamini. As a fully fledged soldier, Mbeki served as assistant secretary to the Revolutionary Council of the ANC in Lusaka in 1971. A little-known fact is that it is believed Mbeki taught Jacob Zuma how to fire a gun, the same man he would later fire as his deputy president. President Mbeki and Zuma were very close in exile as comrades in arms, but we cannot say the same today. President Mbeki served in many departments in the ANC. He was at the ANC headquarters in Lusaka in 1978. In the same year, he became the political secretary in the office of the president of the ANC, where he worked closely with his mentor and father figure, Oliver Reginald Tambo. If you listen to interviews with Tambo, you will hear similarities in their speaking styles. Mbeki has mentioned how he was exposed to meetings conducted with Mwalimu Julius Nyerere, the then president of Tanzania, at an early age. Those meetings helped shape him for the future, teaching him how to run meetings effectively. Between 1984 and 1989, he was deployed as the director of the Department of Information and Publicity. At this time, he worked hard to restore the image of the ANC, which in those days was known as a terrorist movement. While we are talking about the ANC, please check out a video about the history of the ANC and its downfall on my channel. Thabo Mbeki is a leader who was also close to figures like Thomas Sankara from Burkina Faso in the 1980s. He was part of many delegations that negotiated for a new South Africa. In 1993, he was elected chairperson of the ANC, succeeding the late Oliver Reginald Tambo, with whom he had a close working relationship over the years. He was the first Democratic Deputy President of South Africa, serving alongside F.W. de Klerk, and was instrumental in assisting President Mandela, as Mandela was often busy with international trips. It is said that President Mandela acted as the head of state, while Mbeki was the head of government. In 1997, he was voted ANC president unopposed, and in 1999, he became president of South Africa during a very difficult time on the continent due to Africa's Second War, or the Congo War. If you want to know more about the history of Congo, please check out my video on the history of Congo. He was also instrumental in peace talks in Burundi and the Ivory Coast in the early 2000s. Returning to Mbeki, this was a hard time. It is said that Tony Blair wanted to force a regime change in Zimbabwe using military force, but President Mbeki refused because it would have caused many deaths. He was not a pushover. He would state his convictions to anyone and disagree if he was convinced about something. He believed in African solutions for African problems. He is also a founding president of the African Union, which was launched in Durban on July 9, 2002, with Mbeki as its first president at the first session of the Assembly of the African Union. According to President Mbeki, he saw that the OAU had achieved its mission of decolonization and dismantling apartheid, and a new organization was needed. The African Union was established to create a more integrated, prosperous, and peaceful Africa. While the founding members of the African Union had good intentions, the challenge remains in its implementation. While he was president of South Africa, the nation's economy experienced significant growth, with an average annual GDP growth of 4.2% and average inflation of 5.7%. We should not forget that the ANC inherited a bankrupt economy, but the Thabo Mbeki government managed to run a successful economy. We cannot say the same after he left the government. In 2001, Eskom received the Power Company of the Year award from the Financial Times Global Energy Awards. This recognition highlighted Eskom's achievements in expanding electricity access and its operational efficiency at the time, but today, Eskom is another story. During his presidency, the government had a strategic reserve for emergencies, so South Africa was not affected much after the 2008 world financial crisis because the government survived on the reserves from his tenure. There are controversial aspects of Mbeki's presidency. The first is the Zimbabwe election. Based on the explanation from the book, Thabo Mbeki I Know, Mbeki was avoiding forced democratization by the West because he had seen the results in Tunisia and Syria, where the states fell apart. Other great examples of where the West forced reform are Libya and Iraq. We were told that if they could remove Saddam Hussein and Gaddafi, all problems would be gone, but now those nations are worse off. Thabo Mbeki used an approach of facilitating Zimbabwean political actors to find a solution to their problem, and they found one that resulted in a government of national unity. The economy of Zimbabwe performed well at the time compared to what happened before the inclusive government, when the economy collapsed. The Zimbabwe mediation cost him his presidency in the country because external forces were very angry and used his movement to recall him. This issue can be debated. When President Mbeki was president of the country, he was very decisive. He ran a tight ship from ministers to premiers. He was in charge. He even fired his then deputy president, Jacob Zuma, in 2005 because of allegations of corruption. Many presidents will not fire their ministers even when they are useless. Ministers and premiers were appointed based on efficiency and integrity. The president was instrumental in building government institutions like the Human Rights Commission and the Public Protector, all of which are Chapter 9 institutions designed to safeguard democracy and protect citizens' rights. Additionally, the National Economic Development and Labor Council, NEDLAC, was formed to foster collaboration between government, business, labor, and civil society. Other significant bodies include the Electoral Commission, the Auditor General, and the Commission for Gender Equality, all of which contribute to the checks and balances within the new democratic system. The president was instrumental in the conception of the Scorpions Unit to fight organized crime and corruption. That is the reason after he was removed, the ANC was quick to disband it. President Mbeki is a great intellectual, economist, and philosopher. He holds the position of Chancellor at the University of South Africa UNISA, and is an elder on the continent, where current leaders ask him for advice. On September 24, 2008, he resigned as South African president after being recalled by his party, the ANC. His critics believed he was focusing more on African continental issues than on domestic issues. President is a father of African Renaissance, and in South Africa is also called the father of clever blacks. Is Mbeki the greatest president the continent has ever produced? Let us know in the comments below. And remember to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more Peak World content.